welcome back to the Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Chandler Hoagland, and today we have Mandy. Welcome, Mandy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, well, I'm so excited to have you. Today we are going to be talking about midlife crisis. However, we refuse to live in crisis, so we are taking that word out and we are championing awakeness.
Yes.
So welcome to Midlife Awakening. But first, let's start with the icebreaker. What small thing would you change in your day-to-day life to improve your whole life?
Ooh, I would say for me, something that I have actually done is January 1st, I started waking up. I set my alarm before everyone else in the house wakes up, just to simply prioritize my time before the day gets a hold of me and kind of dictates how that's going to go. And that time is sacred time for me. I'm prioritizing and giving my best to me, to God. I read, pray, do whatever I need to do to feel like myself and start my day off what I feel like is the best way possible.
Yeah, so do you feel like you would just try to implement that more often, or are you already doing that pretty consistently?
That is something that I started this year and that I've been doing consistently and have implemented. And I've seen a huge difference in my life as a result of that change.
Yeah, I like that. And I need to get better at that. That would be pretty much my answer as well. I just think starting your day off in that like peacefulness for yourself and with God will transfer to the rest of your day because you're not immediately waking up and feeling like the chaoticness of life.
Yeah.
If you have children, I do not, but from what I've heard, sometimes the mornings can be a little crazy with them. So if you can get up and do that before the kiddos wake up, I bet your day can go a little smoother.
Yeah, that's probably a huge reason of why I do it as well. And, my little one, I feel like he has a radar and knows like, oh, my mom's up early.
Yeah.
But, I feel like for the most part, it's really changed how I go into my day. And how I view, like the little things stay little things. I feel like I'm able to have a little bit more patience in my day because I know I've like taken care of myself and I've fed my soul, and
True.
it just makes it easier for me as opposed to letting the world get its grip on you and just shake you around.
Right. Oh, and it totally can, very quickly.
Yeah, it still does sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's really diminished that. I feel like it's definitely decreased that from happening. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Have you ever heard of like the power of making your bed right when you get up in the morning and like what that can do, and just like immediately having a goal accomplished from the start of your day? And I think that really is so true. Like you have already accomplished such a small task, but that small task can transfer into feeling accomplished for your day already, like from the start.
Absolutely. I feel like, I have heard that. I forget where I heard that from, but it's something that, it's funny that you say that. That is something that my husband and we have shared with our son as well. If you do nothing else that day, you did that. And it's just that little step towards like purpose and discipline. And
yes, well, because let's be honest, like some days you're just not going to accomplish your
life's
goals.
hard.
Like you're just like, one, it's already hard sometimes to get out of bed, but if you do get out of bed, that's a big accomplishment. And then you make your bed, even greater accomplishment. And then the rest of the day can be, let's be honest, like crap, and it's going to be okay because at least we have this. And that's like something to praise,
Yeah, and being a human is messy. It's hard. And when you walk past that bed and it's made versus being unmade, it makes it a lot more difficult to like give up and hop in that bed.
Oh, so true.
Just to walk past it and keep moving.
Yeah. No, like my bed is literally a warm hug. And if it's made, I'm like, oh, fine. I'll walk away.
There's something psychological to that.
No, for sure. Okay, so let's hop into this. We will kind of start from the beginning feelings of when you felt like you were going through this midlife awakening. So what brought you to that point of feeling like you had to reevaluate your life?
So it was a few years ago. I had just turned 37, and I realized that I was feeling like restless and unfulfilled. Something just felt like off, that it was missing. I went out of town for a conference, and I kind of realized, being out of my natural element, being out of my patterns and away from home, I started to it made me realize the habits that I had formed, like this is what I do every night kind of thing. And I was coming home and opening a bottle of wine when my son was getting ready for bed was as natural to me as like brushing my teeth. It was a habit. And, for me, that was a sign that something was off for me. And I realized too that it was hard for me to define what was missing. It's like I felt lost and ready for change, but was feeling just as lost about what that was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so just feeling like unhappy and unfulfilled in my life, and lost in motherhood, and lost in my role as a wife. And, at the time, our marriage was having some issues, and I felt disconnected, not just in my marriage, but from who I was and my purpose. And, approaching 40, it's kind of mind blowing, because you realize, like, my gosh, I've been on this earth 37 years, and God willing, I have about that many left. And what is that going to look like? Is it going to look like this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really sobering thought.
Yeah, I'm sure. Did you feel like you were just caught up in like the mundane lifestyle and like mundane actions, and you were just getting tired of that, and you just needed something else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you have to remember too, we were just like coming out of COVID. That was unprecedented. None of us knew how to deal with that. I had a 2-year-old during COVID working from home, and, that probably didn't help.
Mm-hmm.
And so that cannot be understated. But I feel like with everything going on, I was just kind of going through the motions, and I wasn't living. There was no juice. Like, there was no juice in my life. Like, no, I had joy. I've wanted to be a mom, but then I also was starting to realize I can't just come home and do this. Like, I don't want to be that kind of mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's hard. That's a hard realization to come to.
For sure. So you kind of touched on this a little bit before, that you had a glass of wine every night. That was just kind of your nighttime routine, and just gave you maybe some peace in the evening. What other habits, patterns, or beliefs would you say were dragging you down at this time?
Definitely. And I will say too, I feel like I was having sometimes more than a glass of wine, but I feel like it's like this mom culture that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You see all these memes like of moms holding a glass of wine. Like, you can't even go into a boutique without seeing a hand towel with like a mom holding a glass of wine, making some kind of joke about it.
Right.
And so really, truly, I didn't even see it as an issue.
No, it's so normalized.
It wasn't, I was functioning. I wasn't getting wasted. I mean, I wasn't really being like irresponsible or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was more just this unhealthy habit. Like, what else could I have been doing with that time? And the fact that it was habitual for me, it wasn't really affecting my life in a negative way other than that. And I feel like that to me was still a symptom, a sign of something being wrong. And for me, I noticed, once I just decided, I'm going to stop drinking for a while and just eliminate it from my life, and kind of focus on getting to the bottom of this. Because at the time, I had no idea what this was.
Right.
I had no idea that I would still be in this journey 2 years in. I mean, I'm in a very different place now.
Right. But did you just feel like you were living in like constant turmoil, and you didn't know what the root of that was?
Yeah, I just didn't realize what it was. I knew I needed to dig deep. So I decided to stop drinking, and I did for quite a while. And I called and got myself a therapist for the first time in my life, and decided I'm going to dig deep into this. And one of the various things that we discussed and uncovered for me, as far as to answer your question about patterns and beliefs, was realizing that in my relationships, in my life in general, really, I tend to overfunction. And that overfunctioning was really a huge source of my feeling resentful, unfulfilled, almost like making myself into a martyr for my own unhappiness in my life.
Yeah. And so, did you find yourself constantly pairing with people that underfunction, or would you try to find also overfunctioners to be with?
I will say, and this is the interesting thing that I discovered upon, like, once we started talking about this. The more I dug into it and the more I learned, the more eye-opening it truly was. And it's like now I can see it everywhere in all these relationships around me. So it's really interesting. Overfunctioners, they're going to be the kind of personality that comes in and like they take over and they start directing, like almost like having some control gives them comfort. And so overworking in the relationship to hold it together, over accommodating.
Right.
And whereas the under functioners, they're the type that's going to be like distant and avoidant. And both of those, interestingly, are trying to resolve their own anxiety through other people. And both are, these are both strategies that are from the family of origin, and they're autopilot like responses to stress. And so whenever you realize that these are just reactions and they're autopilot responses that people are doing to reduce and calm the stress and calm themselves, you see it for what it is. And for me, that was a great comfort because now I know this is what you're doing. And all this time I'm looking at my husband and I'm like focused on his stuff, and I couldn't see my own part in what I was doing to myself, because you can't change another person, but you can change how you show up.
Yeah, and I think that's like the main point of all this is that like you can only control you and your actions, right? As much as sometimes you would love to control other people's actions, that's not reality. And so maybe understanding that you're overfunctioning, what that looks like, and how you can set boundaries in that overfunctioning to assist the underfunctioning person to kind of, I don't want to say like gaslight them into doing what you want, but almost like just kind of putting a pause on overfunctioning for them. They do and will naturally figure it out. And so do you feel like you had to put up boundaries or rethink the boundaries that you had already put up to kind of balance the over-functioning and under-functioning aspect of your life?
Oh, gosh, yeah. So, I mean, that's right on. I realized one of the big things that was always said to me in my sessions was like, you've got to live in your truth and stand in your boots. And that's just how she is. She's very direct, and I love that about her. But I realized I just really needed to stop people pleasing. And really, boundaries are just a huge part of that. Having healthy boundaries without the guilt. It's like, I'm the kind of person that I would think, oh my gosh, like, what do they think about what I just said or did?
Yes. The guilt part is
guilt tripping myself,
and it's so hard to get over because I do this myself, especially when it comes to my family. And because I always have thought they raised me in such a great way, right? Yeah. And like, that was I don't want to say that was their job, but I mean, they were my parents. Yeah. That was their responsibility to raise me. And it's not my responsibility as a child to feel obligated to give back to them, I guess, for raising me in such a good way. Like, I want to out of my love for them. But when I can't, I shouldn't feel guilty about not almost parenting them now, in a sense. Like, sometimes I can't show up for them, but their responsibility was to show up for me because I was their child. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's like, I don't like to disappoint people.
Yes.
And I love my parents. I respect my parents. I feel like when I disappoint people, that's like a hard thing for me. There's a lot of shame, I feel.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild. And so me feeling guilty for not doing that out of fear that I'm disappointing someone, or if I do something that I feel is disappointing, that just guts me.
Right.
It would gut me. And I think for me, just realizing like, hey, I've got to stop being passive. I've got to be direct. And there's absolutely a way to be direct from a place of love and kindness. And for me, I don't know why I just didn't see it that way. And I look back on some things and think about that. I'm like, oh, that's wild. there is absolutely a difference between being kind and being nice.
Yes.
And that is the most helpful thing, realizing that, like, hey, I'm going to be kind. I don't have to deliver this brutally, but this is the truth.
Right.
And I don't need to worry about, this, how this grown adult is going to handle this or handle their emotions. That is not my responsibility.
Right.
And for too long, I for some reason felt like that was my responsibility.
Yes.
And out of not wanting to disappoint.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to mention not feeling guilty for their response or allowing them to guilt trip you like you owe them something.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to be selfish sometimes, but for your own peace, for your own health, and especially mental health, you have to be selfish. And when you're trying to people please all the time and feeling that guilt, it can really wear you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that allowing and understanding them to act however they want to act, realizing that's between them and God and not between anyone else,
right,
is a big aspect, like the main aspect to setting boundaries without feeling like you just ruined a relationship or ruined yourself.
Yeah, because I mean, if you can't stay with what's true, and if you are coming to somebody in your life that's an important relationship, and if they can't handle you delivering the truth from a place of love and kindness, and you're out of this fear that you're going to lose the relationship, then you're over functioning to keep that relationship running smoothly.
Right.
And is it really a relationship worth saving if it can't handle you being you?
Right. Well, it's exhausting. Like, that has to be exhausting, over functioning in all these relationships to keep them up. Like, sometimes, unfortunately, it's just not worth it. And, like, it's not worth it for everyone's well-being.
Absolutely not. And I think it's really interesting because I actually had physical symptoms of this. Like, I was in adrenal failure, and I was having to take supplements for it. And that is absolutely a symptom of my overfunctioning. It was like right there in my lab work. And that was eye-opening for me because it was affecting my health. And not just like my mental well-being, but my health. And life has a funny way whenever you decide, like, this isn't for me, or you start showing up differently in a relationship, and it's like, say you have like a friendship, then you realize, like, hey, I'm not going to show up this way in this friendship anymore. And you had been tolerating something for so long, and then all of a sudden you're just like, I can't tolerate this. This is not, I'm not able to accept this, or this is, out of, there doesn't have to be any ill will or anything. It's just not working. You've grown out of it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with growing out of a relationship or a friendship. And that's like part of our journeys. I feel like it's natural. And when that happens, it creates a void. And life has a funny way of, whenever you get rid of something like that, and you move on, it has a funny way of filling that with something that is meaningful.
Totally. Yeah, because over-functioning and under-functioning come in so many forms outside of just marriages or a boyfriend, girlfriend, however you want to look at it. Like, it is in every relationship of your life, even in your professional life. I mean, work-life balance. If that's not balanced, there's some type of over-functioning or under-functioning in either side. Work over-functioning, life under-functioning. I mean, that relationship translates to so much.
Yeah.
And so in that, what tips would you give to overfunctioners to stop overfunctioning in their life?
I would say it's a very strange time because you've got one foot in this life that you are not wanting to live in anymore. Like, say some things aren't working, and you know that there needs to be change, and you're in this state of we said rebirth earlier, but like this state of becoming. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and you really just have to lean into that discomfort. I have felt more discomfort in the past few years. I've allowed myself to feel the discomfort. I haven't pacified it. I haven't smothered it with something else or avoided it. I have sat with so much discomfort, and it's been hard. It's strengthened my relationship. I've abided more with God, and the more I abide, the stronger my faith naturally gets, and the more close I feel like I have a relationship with God. And so I lean on that a lot, and I would say definitely lean into that discomfort and the uncertainty, because it's painful and it can feel like the suffering is hard, but you know that from that you're going to grow, because we don't grow without suffering.
Yeah.
We don't mature without being able to lean into the discomfort and be in that suffering and not living there and staying there. And that's why we didn't want to call it crisis, because it's an awakening, like a rebirth. And that is exactly how I see it. When I look back on the past 2 years, I don't see a crisis. I see this this transformation, and it's been painful at sometimes. Sometimes it's been a roller coaster. And I would also say what has really helped me is reconnecting with myself.
Yes.
And who I was before the world told me who to be. And I went and dug out a picture of me when I was 5, and it just made me feel like I still have it. I still have it sitting out as a reminder. Before the world got a hold of you, who were you and what brought you joy? And doing those things. And it sounds really silly, but me doing those things has reconnected myself, like with my joy and my purpose. And I would just say growing into like who you're becoming and leaning into that discomfort is key.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the world is really good at telling you who you should be, what your life at this time should look like, what your marriage should look like, what being a mom should look like, especially just being a woman in general. What should that look like? We talked about it off this podcast a little earlier, how being a woman can just be so hard. And we brought up the monologue from Barbie. And it's like, how silly is it that this movie called Barbie has this monologue in it that's so powerful and so relatable to almost every woman. I haven't come across a woman where they're like, yeah, that doesn't relate to me. But it's like true. If you're a mom and you have a career, the world is telling you that you're not a good enough mom because you're putting emphasis on your career. But if you're a stay-at-home mom, then you're not good enough because you're not providing to your family financially from a job.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like absolutely. Nothing ever seems right. If you're too thin, then you're on Ozempic or you're on crack or whatever it may be. But if you're too fat, then you're unhealthy and you're obese, and there's no way you can be fat and healthy. And it's just like you cannot win all the time. And I think like realizing just what is true to you and living in that truth, satisfying your own needs in that little girl, whoever it may be, before the world got a hold of her, is so important to any rebirth or awakening, because that's truly who you are, not who everyone else outside is telling you who to be.
Yeah, because at the end of this, and that's the thing, I think that's a huge part of the midlife awakening. And what makes it so like jolting is because I read where Brene Brown said more or less that like it's like the life grabs you by the shoulders and it's like, hey, you're halfway dead, like get on it.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, okay, I was not put here. Like I've lived half of my life like worried about what this is gonna do, worried about disappointing people, trying to do this, be the perfect mom, do this, do that, and if I continue to do that, this, like my life has flown by, I feel like, and that's how much I have left. If I continue this way, I'm going to be on my deathbed and I'm going to be like, none of that mattered. Just to be me and show up as me.
Yes. And, I think that you can go one of two ways when you hear something like that, like your life's halfway over. That can either put you in a spiral of, oh crap, my life is almost over, like, let that motivate me to change and grow. Or you can fall off and be like, well, let me just give up because it's almost over. And I think it's so important to feel the first option of let this motivate me to grow, because there's still so much growth that can happen. And let me live for me and what's right for my family moving forward, and not for the world.
Yes. Like, that is key, is that does happen to some people. Like, there's so many cliches and stereotypes in movies about this. Like, this guy goes and buys a sports car. They start accumulating things. They get a toupee. They get hair plugs, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Women go get their face redone and go start getting plastic surgery. Those are Band-Aids on bullet wounds. That is not going to get you out of this.
Right.
Like, and I think that happens to a lot of people. And being a woman, it's really hard to age. It's really hard, especially post baby. You know, you look different, things feel different. And no matter what, as we age, it's hard. Being a woman, being a person in aging is difficult. And then getting to the half point and feeling this way, it's hard for anybody. And some people do stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that. Things for me right now look very different than they did a few years ago. Things right now look different for me than they did 6 months ago. My life is changing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm holding on. And, you know, one of my best friends just said this to me the other day. She was like, I feel like I'm watching your life, and it's like watching a movie. And I can't wait to see what happens and unfolds for you, because this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know, right?
Yes.
And I can't either.
I know.
You know, I just have my popcorn and I'm going with the flow. And it's still, even though that sounds crazy, it's still better than where I was 2 years ago.
Right, because all of this change and all these things happening, though it's so quickly, it's all growth. And like, only good things can come from growth, right? Like I have really tried to think, what bad things can come from growing. Obviously, you may lose relationships, because sometimes when you're growing, the other person isn't. Like, you just grow apart. But then that relationship isn't for you, right? And I mean that in the best way. Like, I never want someone to lose friends or get a divorce or anything like that. So do not take it that way. But it is so important to let go of things holding you back into this place that you don't want to live in anymore. Mm-hmm. And growth is so beautiful. And it's just so important to lean into that, especially as you're reevaluating and awakening this new life and new person inside of you, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, to your point, I have lost friendships from this. And, you know, my marriage has changed because I changed so much. And then my husband, he naturally has changed as well as a result. Like, when one person changes, it changes the dynamic of that relationship. And I have lost friends in this because it's just not a fit anymore. And that's okay. Like, and you know what? It was painful because you're still grieving a loss. You just don't sit with it too long. You've got to realize, like, not all, you know, friendships end that way. Like, it's a letting go. Mm-hmm. You know, and you just go your own way. It doesn't have to be this horrible event that breaks your friendship. It could just be growing apart, and that is okay.
Right.
And, you know, I have felt grief around that. It's like the end of an era. This is, you know, and that's just something, again, like leading into that discomfort and feeling it and then moving on.
Yeah. So, do you feel like you have reached the destination of where you want to be in your awakening?
Yes and no, because I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be right now. Mm-hmm. And I also know it's not time to stop.
Right.
And so, yes and no, because I don't know where I'm going to go from here, but I do know this. Whatever is happening right now, I don't think this journey of growing is going to just end for me. And I'm going to find this resting place of, okay, this is good. I don't need to grow anymore and I'm done. Like, yes. I feel like this for me is going to be a process for the rest of my life. I am eager to see what this next phase holds for me. I have some ideas and some feelings, and every day it's weird. Like, even on the drive here, I was like, I had this realization, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to do this, you know?
Yeah.
And just kind of developing that and leaning into those hunches as well. Just things that I want to do with my life. And and not setting limitations on what I can and cannot do has been really important.
Sometimes when we set either something physically or in our mind as like, this is the destination, this is the end for me, I'll be good once I reach there, or I can go on to the next step once I check this off my list, that puts limitations on our life. Totally. Because we stop growing, or when we reach that destination, we throw our hands up and go, okay, this is my life. I truly believe we do not stop growing till the day we die in any way. And that doesn't have to mean like these transformative, huge, like transformations of your life of growth, but it could just mean some daily task,
Yeah, like just living and doing what brings you joy. I feel like we just get lost in our responsibilities in our day to day, and we find ourselves like I was a few years ago, just going through the motions and not knowing what to do about it.
Like, let's be honest, life can be exhausting no matter what stage you're in. And so it's so easy to get trapped in doing just the daily routine, getting by, doing the basics till the next day. But I think especially in your awakening, it's so important to go beyond that. And awakening doesn't have to mean midlife. I think awakening, you can have that at any point in your life. And that just may look different based on that time period. But it's so important to, yes, be present in your day to day and do those tasks and your responsibilities day to day, but always yearning for more and always growing towards more and working on yourself, working on your relationships, working on your family, whatever that looks like. But as soon as we just say this, all right, this is my life, this is what every day looks like, and we stop, you will never be fulfilled in that. I just don't feel like fulfillment will come from doing that.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I feel like that feels almost like describing death to me. And, I think it's absolutely crucial to take care of yourself, like, and not neglect yourself and the things that bring joy and that juice in life, because this is precious. It's precious time. And, it's made me a better mother. It's made me a better wife, a better friend in doing all of this, as opposed to living on autopilot, not questioning anything I'm doing, and just accepting that reality. And that's just no way to live. And so many of us do that, I feel like. And
right. Well, it's the easy thing to do, right?
Yeah. And like midlife, I think it happens so much because of the piece where you're like the realization that you're halfway through, possibly, God willing, you live that long. There's something about that.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right in that you can wake up and live your life anytime. And if you are feeling like any of this is relatable, then you absolutely can start first thing in the morning or right now and just start making different choices.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think I can see your growth and your progress just from the short time I've known you. And it's truly incredible and inspires me to like, okay, Chandler, get it together. This is just because this is your life now doesn't mean this has to be your life forever. And that's been really inspiring. And we're 10 years apart. But it's so good to see. And I can like take so much knowledge and wisdom from you in that. And that helps me in my everyday walk, not only spiritually, just in my relationships and what I want and what I want to look forward to and how I want my life to look. So thank you for that. I just like appreciate you so much. And I hate to see you struggle at any point in time, but struggling does bring a lot of beauty too. Earlier, when we were talking about the process of butterflies, right? Like, it's not always beautiful. That whole process at the beginning, cocoon can look a little crazy, look a little dark, look a little dirty, whatever it may be. But man, what comes out of that is so beautiful and so good. And we never know what it's going to look like when it comes out, right? We never know what the butterfly is going to look like. And just like we don't know what we're going to look like at the other side of this. but we know it's going to be good, and we know it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Amen.
Yes.
It's going to be better than whatever it was before. That is for
Yes.
sure.
So good. Well, I appreciate you coming on here to Perspective. I am definitely ready for my awakening. No crisis here. We are not for that. We are just
Awakening.
awoken. What?
Yeah.
What? How do you even say that?
I don't know. Awakening is the only thing I keep saying, but
Yeah.
it's definitely like a rebirth. Like,
Yeah.
just time to live life. It's time to live life to the fullest. This is all we've got.
Yeah. Don't wait.
Don't settle, and don't live on autopilot.
Yeah. I think that is a disservice to yourself, is to just live on auto.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to life, and when you realize that, man, how good is it?
Absolutely. And you don't even know or realize how far reaching that effect can have, like, on the people around you, and like your own friends or your own spouse or your children or your parents.
Yeah, totally. I love it. So inspiring. Thank you again. I hope you gained some confidence and some knowledgeable information from Mandy. I know I always do. She's my go-to person when I'm like, Mandy, my life is crazy. What's going on? She knows what to tell me, and I love that. So I hope that y'all got that same effect from her as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you next time.